In this video, we'll go over what app-based.io lets you do through its control plane and other features. So you got your app-based.io deployment going, whether you did it with Docker or through cloud, and what next? So you would first of all go here and connect to your app-based.io deployment. Since I am setting this up using Docker and I'm setting it up on localhost, I'm going to enter those credentials. If you are running it on a cloud, you can enter the credentials you see from your dashboard. We'll see that we have this one app here, and so what we'll do is we'll delete this app because we want to recreate the experience of what it looks like when you're just getting started. Okay, we'll first go through the interactive tutorial because we don't have any apps right now, and we'll call our app Movies. We are importing this data set of 500 movies that we obtained from TMDB. Each item in this data really looks like this, and let's go ahead and import. So this is our imported data set. This is how it looks like. We'll go to the next step of the tutorial and see how we can set some searchable fields. So these fields get searched on. So for instance, let's say if I want to search for Wonder, it searches for Wonder here. But let's say what if I want to add tagline and overview as well. We can see that now the highlighting works on the tagline and overview as well. So next step is let's set some aggregation fields. So we'll set release year as our first aggregation. We can see this histogram range UI that lets us filter between the years, and we can also pick, let's say, genres, and that lets us filter by genres in this manner. And that's all there is to the interactive tutorial. So we'll finish this up and go to our dashboard. In case you're wondering, hey, I got a very different data set. How am I going to configure search? And there's way more details when it comes to building a search engine than the couple of items we just saw. So we're just going to look at exactly that right now. I want to introduce to the import data tool. The import data lets you bring in data from JSON, CSV, Elasticsearch, SQL, right from the GUI here. We also have a CLI which lets you import from 8 or 10 different sources. We also have a Zapier integration that lets you connect with more than 1,500 different APIs and bring your data in that way. You can go and look at the docs to find more information on this. We have this very neat little tool called Search Preview, which we're going to look at. And this lets you look at your data set in a very generic fashion. So we can see that there's a bunch of fields here depending on the data set we have, and we have about 500 results that show up. We'll go and update some of these settings here. So we'll start with search. What we're going to do here is select the fields that the search should apply on. We don't want to search on genres, for instance, and we want to say that the title gets more weight. Maybe the tagline gets the next most weight, and let overview be the fallback, where it should find matches, but it should not be the first preference. So if a movie matched with a title, that should definitely rank higher. We'll go and review and save this. And once we have saved this, we can actually go and test the search relevancy. But while we are here, maybe let's also change the result view a little bit before we start the testing. So in the result settings, we are going to be able to change. Let's start with the fields. So we want to select the fields that we have returned. We'll only pick these 3 fields so it's easier to look at on the eyes. And we'll also enable highlighting. We'll use the same 3 fields to highlight it. And we'll leave the default settings for how the fragment highlighting works. Let's review and save these settings. They look good. And we can try one last thing. We can also go and set in the aggregations. So here we want to, let's say, start with genres, and then let's say we want to start with release year, but this time instead of doing a range slider, let's do a term. And so we can save these settings and go to our search relevancy, and now we can see that we have 2 aggregations that show up on the sidebar, and we have basically built a faceted search except the user interface layer of it. And we can see that since we only selected 3 fields, only those show up. We have some meta fields here, ID, score, and type. We'll explain about them a little bit. So let's start with our first search. I want to search for Despicable Me. We can see the suggestions showing up as we start typing, and when we press enter, it shows us 379 results, and we can see that there are these top results that match pretty well. But we also see something that's starting result number 4. There's very little matching. In fact, we see that there's the word me that's kind of prefix matching, it seems, and we can also see the difference in the score. So the score really tells the relevance ranking relative to each document. And so we see that the first 2 results had very high scores, and starting result number 4, the scores drastically dropped. Now, we may not even want this behavior, right? So if we search for Despicable Me, we want to maybe only find movies that contain Despicable Me, and we don't even want to find these partial matches. And so what we can do is we can go back to set search. We can configure our query format to an AND, which basically means that only results that match every term that is passed to the search box show up. And so once we save this and we go back to our relevant search, and this time we search for Despicable Me, we should see only 3 results match, and that's exactly what we wanted. So this is perfect. We can also test out the filtering using the aggregations, and we see that, hey, there's no movie that matches this search term and this filter. But if we remove the search term, we see that there are 25 results that do match. So this is great. Also, we can see that the record analytics toggle is on. And so at this point, we have some results that we can visualize as we were searching in the analytics views. So we can see that our session has been roughly like 7 minutes so far. We have done a total of 35 searches. Some of these analytics probably come from some searches I did before this. And we can also see that our no result searches are coming from Despicable Me 4. And we can also see these are our popular searches. They have been searched these many times. There's also a feature where we can actually go and replay the search just as the user searched it into the UI, which is pretty cool. We can also see there's the comedy filter that was tried out 4 different times. You can also deep dive into these views. For instance, we can go to popular searches and it would give us details into the clicks, click position, the click rates, and those are pretty effective in telling you which results are working well, where do you need to go and optimize the search relevance. Access control is something we didn't really go over in this tutorial slash video, but it's a pretty neat feature where you can set credentials which have granular access permissions, from the type of access to the kind of endpoints to the rate limits that you want to set on these endpoints. You can also filter out and specify specific indices. So I can just say, hey, this credential should just work with the movies index we created and shouldn't work with anything else. You can also put restrictions based on whitelisted IPs or specific HTTP domains or URLs. You can also set API rate limits per unique IP to prevent abuse. And you can also set a time to live, which lets you maybe programmatically create these credentials so you limit the surface area of their exposure. There's also role-based access control where you can configure a single sign-on system for app-based IO by connecting with your identity provider, and that way you can build even more robust security for your search. So this is a very quick overview of how app-based really gives you superpowers for your search, and thanks so much for watching this.